Revenge with Karen.
I knew something was rotting in the walls of Westvale Industries the moment I heard Preston use the phrase optic synergy in a Monday stand-up while holding a venti pumpkin cold brew like it was a scepter. He had that kind of face you want to slap with a printer manual, porcelain skin, zero pores, and that smug little "I got this job because daddy signs the paychecks" grin. They introduced him as the new Strategic Innovation VP, which in Westvale speak translates to guy who's never built a spreadsheet but thinks he invented pivot tables. Now me, I'm Karen, not that Karen. I've been here 17 years, outlasted 4 CEOs, 2 embezzlement scandals, 1 office fire, and a Thanksgiving potluck that gave 12 people salmonella. My cubicle's next to the emergency exit by choice. That way, when the place inevitably combusts, I'm the first out with my purse, my flash drive, my dignity. I've trained half the finance department, patched the holes in a bonus structure designed by someone who thought Excel was a kind of yoga, and I keep the books tight enough to make auditors weep tears of joy. So when Preston strutted in like a peacock dipped in Axe body spray, you'd think I'd lose my cool. But no. I clocked him for what he was, a walking HR liability, type of guy who thought emotional labor meant remembering your assistant's birthday. At first, I tolerated the usual nepotism rituals. He'd ask me to summarize decks he hadn't read, forward emails back to me with his own name at the bottom like he'd written them. Once, he asked if we could synergize the AR pipeline into a Web3 scaffold. I said sure, right after we rebuild payroll using moon rocks and goat blood. And hey, before we go any deeper into this disaster of a promotion, I've got to ask, if you're listening and enjoying this little corporate horror story, don't just lurk like an anonymous Slack watcher. Hit that like button and subscribe. It seriously helps the team keep digging up these tales of cubicle justice, and it lets me know I'm not shouting into the office void, you know? Anyway, back to Preston, that slick-haired oracle of nonsense. He was allergic to accountability. A vendor dispute escalated, and he had no clue how the invoice trail worked. Guess who stepped in to unfuse the ticking time bomb? Me. No thank you, no acknowledgement. Just him taking credit during the all-hands with a PowerPoint slide that had my formatting, my data, and even my typo in it, millstone instead of milestone, like a damn watermark. I'd vent about it to my cat, Muffin. She's got more emotional range than our HR team. Loved Preston. Ate up his buzzwords like stale breakroom donuts. He's bringing fresh energy, they'd say. He's really shaking things up. Yeah, like a toddler with a snow globe labeled payroll stability. He started dropping by my desk more and more, asking weird questions. Karen, how do you be so intimidating? Or my personal favorite, how do you handle being the oldest one in the room? I laughed it off, told him wisdom grows in places buttocks can't reach. But inside, I was logging every comment, filing them away. That's the thing about being underestimated. You get to build your case while they're too busy posting shirtless golf pics on LinkedIn. I thought I could ride it out. Wait for him to flame out like the last exec who tried to implement a Bitcoin bonus system. But Preston wasn't just an idiot. He was a connected idiot. Connected idiots are dangerous. They don't get fired. They get promoted, or worse, protected. And that's when the first CC'd email came. Just a little note from Preston to HR. Hey, just wanted to flag a moment in today's sync when Karen's tone felt a little pointed. Not sure she's aligned with our collaborative energy. Collaborative energy? What am I, a Tesla battery? I laughed. But it didn't stop there. More emails came, more casual digs. Maybe she's not adapting to the new team culture. Might be worth checking in on her communication style. I could see the storm forming. HR loves a narrative, especially one where a salty veteran is resisting change. But I still wasn't worried. I danced this dance before. There's always some fresh out of grad school jackass who thinks the old lady in the corner's a pushover. What they don't see is the spreadsheet of death on her desktop, one with every misrouted expense report, every duplicated bonus payment, every shadow consultant billing for services rendered to departments that don't exist. I didn't make waves, just kept sipping my lukewarm coffee, nodding in meetings, and pretending not to hear the whispers. Because what Preston didn't know, and what HR had forgotten, is that I never stopped paying attention. Every login timestamp, every oops expense code, every little digital breadcrumb he dropped. I was collecting them, quietly, meticulously, like a raccoon in bifocals. So yeah, I tolerated him. I watched him flail through budget meetings, rebrand the diversity initiative as vibe alignment, and schedule one-on-ones he never showed up to. But deep down, I knew the story was writing itself, and all I had to do was keep turning the pages. It started with a smirk. Not mine, Preston's. Monday morning, quarterly strategy sync. And I just finished walking the room through a budget realignment that salvaged $270K in misallocated travel funds. No applause, no nod. Just Preston leaning back in his Herman Miller chair like a discount Bond villain, arms crossed, eyes squinting like he'd just discovered sarcasm. "Okay, thanks, Karen," he said slowly, dragging it out like he'd just corrected a child. "Next time, maybe try not to make it sound like we all failed Econ 101. A few chuckles from the interns. I let the silence sit, didn't smile, didn't blink. Just tapped my pen and moved to the next slide. I've learned over the years that silence is louder than any comeback, but apparently silence now translates to hostile energy. That phrase showed up 2 days later, in an email from Preston to HR, CC'd to my director, just flagging some tone concerns during today's sync. Karen's feedback felt pointed, made me uncomfortable, not sure it aligns with the collaborative culture we're building. Collaborative culture, my ass. This is the same guy who once referred to a junior analyst as Excel girl in front of a visiting partner. At first, I brushed it off. HR gets emails like that all the time. We joke about it in the break room, calls coming from inside the glass conference rooms. Then it happened again and again. Sometimes it was a meeting comment. Sometimes a forwarded Slack message with a yellow emoji reaction highlighted like a crime scene. The dumbest one. He attached a screenshot of my Outlook calendar and wrote, "She seems unavailable for strategic syncs." Not a great signal. Unavailable because I was, wait for it, working. The absurdity of it should have made it funny. But it didn't. It made it dangerous. Because I'd seen this dance before. The passive-aggressive paper trail. The slow bleed of narrative. She's difficult. She's inflexible. She's not a team player. Doesn't matter if you saved the company $250,000. Once the whispers start, they're like mold under laminate. By the time you see it, it's already everywhere. Still, I held the line. Eyes forward, smile neutral, until the joke. It was a Thursday. End-of-day wrap-up. Preston was yammering about creating an entrepreneurship culture and asked if anyone wanted to volunteer as innovation sheriffs. I said under my breath, but loud enough to catch a few ears, "Do we get little hats and badges?" Harmless, dry, classic Karen. The room chuckled. He didn't. The next morning, I got the summons. HR wanted to chat. I walked into the conference room, and there he was. Preston, sitting to the side with his laptop open, typing like he wasn't vibrating with smug anticipation. On the other side of the table, HR Director Shelley, cheeks pink, hair too tight, voice like someone practicing empathy in front of a mirror. "Karen, we've received a series of escalating concerns about your tone. Your comments are being perceived as exclusionary, even aggressive. This environment needs to be safe for everyone, including Preston." I stared at her. "We're officially docking your pay," she continued, "till you issue a public apology to the team. Verbally, in Monday's all hands, still staring. And if that doesn't happen, we'll have to escalate. You've been here a long time, Karen, but that doesn't exempt you from adapting to the new culture." Preston didn't say a word. He just sat there with his cold brew, nodding along like he was doing me a favor by not recording the whole thing on his phone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the damn table and recite every email, every timestamp, every backdoor bonus Preston had slipped through the books on his daddy's dime. But I didn't. I breathed. I reached for my bag, and I said very calmly, very clearly, "Understood." Then I left, no tears, no raised voice, just that slow-building storm in my chest. The kind that doesn't lash out. The kind that plots. Because what Shelley and Preston didn't know, what they never bothered to check, is that I'd already seen what was coming. I'd already started preparing for it. I didn't show up to the Monday all-hands. They had my chair front and center, like I was about to confess to war crimes in front of the West Vale Tribunal. Preston had pre-written a slide that said "Fostering Safe Collaboration," with a stock photo of diverse hands stacked in unity. I know this because Denise from billing texted me a photo with the caption, "WTF is this cult SHT?" I didn't reply, just stared at the message, then locked my phone. See, when I left that HR ambush with a calm "understood," what I meant wasn't "I'll play nice." It meant you just pulled the pin and handed me the grenade. I didn't go home and cry into a Chardonnay. I didn't fire off a rage post on Facebook. I went back to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and unlocked it with the tiny brass key taped inside my bra strap. That drawer was my insurance policy. And inside had the receipts, literal and figurative, printed logs, financial summaries, Slack transcripts with strategically highlighted phrases like "let's process this off-cycle" and "does she need to see this?" Screenshots of duplicate invoices, same vendor, different project codes, 5 days apart. And then there were the bonuses. Oh, the bonuses. Preston had been skimming like it was a family buffet. $10,000 project completion awards for projects that never launched. Phantom employees paid out of a contractor contingency line item that no one else had access to. Once, I'd found an expense-marked client engagement dinner for $6,200. The location? A cigar lounge in Vegas. The attendees? Preston and 2 guys whose LinkedIn pages said crypto enthusiast. At first, I had just flagged these things mentally. Told myself someone else will catch this. But nobody did. Preston knew just enough to stay under the radar, and what he didn't know, his daddy shielded. So I started printing, saving, archiving, quietly. Every time he strutted past my desk tossing jargon like Rice Krispies, I smiled and saved another file. Now, with HR's little ultimatum still ringing in my ears, I laid it all out on my desk like a twisted scrapbook. I'd even bought tabs and labels, bonus fraud, payroll anomalies, ghost contractors. There was something satisfying about it, like I was prepping an exhibit for courtroom drama where the defendant hadn't realized the jury had been watching him the whole time. I didn't pace. I didn't mutter. I organized. This wasn't about clearing my name. This was about obliterating theirs, but I knew I couldn't come at them directly. You challenge a good all-boys golden goose too loud, you end up on a PIP by Friday. HR wouldn't listen. Eagle wouldn't touch it without internal blessing. And finance? Half of them were too scared to speak, unless they got Slack permission from Preston's little command squad. So I started planning the drop. I'd already set up a private Proton Mail account under a fake name, mwelker72. No identifying metadata. No signature. I'd run the PDF exports through a metadata scrubber, encrypted the whole archive, uploaded it to a secure Swiss-based storage service. I tested the download links on my neighbor's kid's Chromebook just to make sure it couldn't be traced back to any company device. I didn't even use my own Wi-Fi. McDonald's free network became my personal bunker. But I wasn't ready to send it. Not yet. Timing was everything. I needed to wait for the right moment. The moment when Preston and HR were at their most smug. Their little pink slip theater reached peak arrogance. When they believed I was broken, silent, and scared. So I ignored every follow-up from HR. Shelley emailed. Then called, then emailed again. Karen, we really need to close the loop on Friday's action item. Translation, get on your knees in front of the company and beg for your scraps back. I didn't respond. I came in every day like nothing had happened. Ran the payroll cycle, processed vendor queries, even brought in muffins one morning and said Happy Tuesday like I was on lithium. I could feel their confusion. Preston would pass my desk slower, trying to gauge my temperature. HR glanced nervously whenever I walked into shared space, like I was about to launch into a Shakespearean monologue about injustice. But I gave them nothing. Because I wasn't reacting, I was calculating. They thought they'd shoved me into a corner. What they actually did was give me the perfect reason to unleash hell. That night, at exactly 11:04 p.m., someone named mwelker72 sent an email to a list of internal West Vale addresses that could make a compliance officer wet themselves. Subject line, internal discrepancies requiring urgent audit, review anonymous submission, no signature. No fluff, just facts. Inside were 6 zipped folders, each one named after the cardinal sins Preston committed with the casual grace of a drunk accountant. Bonus fraud, phantom vendors, contractor irregularities, expense manipulation, timestamp falsification, HR collusion. Every folder was stacked with PDF exports, log timestamps, duplicate invoice trails, payment authorizations that didn't match actual bank disbursements, and my personal favorite, Slack screenshots. Preston bragging in his little private channel. She thinks she's untouchable, lol. Watch me get another bonus before the quarter closes. There was even a document labeled Sample Patterns of Misconduct with color-coded highlights and footnotes. It wasn't just a complaint. It was a goddamn thesis. If I'd put that much effort into a PowerPoint deck, we'd have closed Series E in an hour. The email didn't come from any internal system. It bounced through a VPN out of Finland, sent via an encrypted relay that deleted its own headers mid-route. There was no reply to, no sender, no metadata breadcrumbs. Just a neatly bundled corporate nuke hand-delivered to compliance, finance, legal, the CFO, and one unlucky assistant who probably spit their LaCroix all over their MacBook at 11:05 p.m. And me? I was in my bathrobe, eating stale popcorn, watching Wheel of Fortune reruns while Muffin the cat snored beside me like none of it mattered. The next morning, I arrived at the office 7 minutes early. Same as usual, coffee in hand, hair tied up, neutral face, calm steps. Inside, the energy had shifted. It wasn't loud. It was quieter than usual, actually, but in that thick, pressurized way, like the air knew something had happened and it was trying to hold its breath. The front desk assistant, usually chipper and borderline insufferable, gave me a strained smile and asked if I wanted a fresh coffee instead. Not a good sign. The elevators took forever. HR was already huddled in conference room C, blinds half-drawn, lots of whispered phone calls, and tense neck veins. I passed them on my way to my desk like I was walking through a crime scene. My inbox had no messages from Shelley that morning. No follow-up about my apology. No ping from Preston with a reminder to stay aligned with culture goals. Just silence. Blessed, suspicious silence. At 9:12 a.m., the first IT guy walked into the executive wing. By 9:24, the second one followed, carrying a backup drive. And by 10 o'clock, I heard someone mutter, "The CFO just called an emergency huddle." Still, no one said a word to me. I did my work, approved a PO, forwarded a vendor verification form to accounting, sipped my coffee, all while the office churned like a submarine taking on water and no one could find the leak. I passed Preston once. He was on his phone, pacing near the war room. He didn't look smug today. He looked unsure. His shirt was wrinkled. There was sweat under one arm. He gave me a tight nod, like we were old college friends awkwardly bumping into each other at a funeral. I nodded back with the expression of a woman who had no idea what had just exploded over the weekend. Karen? No, she was just working, being professional, unbothered. There's a moment before a storm hits, right after the sky turns that odd metallic gray when everything goes still. Birds vanish, wind stops. It's not loud, not yet, but you can feel the weight of the air pressing down on your skin. That's where I was, not nervous, not even excited, just waiting. Because the thing about storms, once you hear the thunder, it's already too late to run. Preston walked in Tuesday morning like he was still the goddamn crown prince of West Vale, swagger turned up to 11, hair styled with whatever paste smells like daddy's credit score. Tight navy suit, sockless loafers, aviators on indoors. He strutted past accounting like a man who still believed he owned the room, or at least rented it at premium. But you could see it, just beneath the surface. The tension in his jaw, the hesitation in his swagger, the extra beat he took before greeting anyone, like he was waiting for someone to say something. Accuse him, confront him, anything. Nobody did. That was the beauty of it. No alarms, no sirens. Just that creeping feeling of exposure tightening around his ribs like a belt someone else was pulling. I was already at my desk, coffee in hand, humming quietly to myself while triple-checking reimbursement codes for the Q3 budget review. Not that I needed to. But the illusion had to hold, Karen. The diligent numbers drone, still chugging along while the ship began to take on water. He passed me, tried a smile. I gave him one right back. Soft, blank, polite. We'd never been in a conference room together while he gleefully watched HR strip 14% from my paycheck, because his feelings got bruised by a sarcastic joke about sheriff hats. "Hey Karen," he said, voice trying too hard to be breezy. "Morning," I replied, tone smoother than silk on a church pew. He lingered for a second, maybe waiting for me to flinch. I didn't. I blinked. That was it. He moved on. An hour later, HR sent another email. "Hi Karen, just checking in, still waiting to confirm your remarks for next Monday's apology. We'd like to include it in the company newsletter." The audacity, the newsletter. Like this was a correction blurb under the Employee of the Month photos. I didn't respond. They followed up at 3:17 p.m. with a calendar invite, draft apology, review tentative. I declined it, not declined with a reason. Not rescheduled, just a flat decline. HR must have been pulling their hair out. But they weren't ready to escalate because something else had their attention, something bigger. By mid-morning, the CFO, Wesley, usually composed to the point of catatonia, was pacing outside the legal suite like a man whose favorite yacht just caught fire. phone glued to his ear, sweat dotting the collar of his pressed shirt. At one point, he yanked off his tie like it was trying to strangle him and snapped, "Check again. I want timestamps for every authorization over 25K. Then IT started making appearances in rooms they didn't normally enter. Not just one guy resetting someone's printer, no, teams of them. Quiet, serious, badge-scanning, shoulder-whispering types. I watched one plug a drive into a VP's laptop while another jotted notes. They weren't fixing anything. They were collecting. The Whisper network ignited by noon. Did you hear? Someone flagged bonuses. No, Preston's team can't access their budget sheets. I heard someone filed a federal tip. Anonymous. Legals running fire drills behind locked doors. No one saying why. Me, I said nothing. I listened. I kept typing, kept sipping my coffee, kept nodding when someone asked if I was going to the potluck next week. I wasn't. It was fascinating, watching the paranoia ripple outward. Preston, trying to act unfazed, started asking louder, dumber questions during meetings to reassert dominance. What's our current offshore holding exposure? He asked in a Wednesday check-in about printer cartridges. Nobody answered. Probably because nobody knew we even had offshore holdings until that moment. Shelley from HR looked tired, puffy-eyed. Her normal faute cheer drained into a series of tight-lipped hallway power walks. She didn't send another message after I declined her invite. Just silence. Which, for HR, is like the sound of a gun cocking. And yet, nobody could point a finger, because the whistleblower hadn't left any fingerprints. And Karen? Well, Karen was just here, doing her job, quiet, respectful, smiling. A little extra calm, maybe. A little too serene while the firm's intestines twisted into knots behind closed doors. I had waited, plotted, packaged it all like a ticking gift box. And now I was watching them unwrap it. One shaky hand at a time. It happened on a Thursday. 9:36 a.m. sharp. We were barely through the first wave of meetings when an all-staff email came through, short, clinical, soaked in panic sweat hiding behind corporate neutral tone. Subject: Temporary access freeze, executive accounts body. Due to a scheduled audit review and compliance recalibration, Finance has enacted a precautionary freeze on select executive compensation and disbursement accounts. Appreciate your patience. Scheduled audit review, my ass. The place reacted like someone had pulled the fire alarm and then duct-taped the exits shut. Directors pulled earbuds out mid-Zoom. Slack lit up like a Vegas slot machine. Even the vending machine guy paused restocking Kit Kats to look around like, y'all feeling that? The energy wasn't nervous. It was infected. Like something contagious had started to spread, and everyone could feel it crawling under their skin. I didn't flinch. Just took another sip of my lukewarm coffee and kept scrolling through an invoice batch that definitely wasn't going anywhere for the foreseeable future. 10 minutes later, I heard it. Not a whisper, not a rumor, footsteps, heavy ones, then the slam of a door. Wesley, the CFO, stormed into conference room 4A holding a crumpled printout like it was a dead animal. His tie was gone, shirt collar open, veins visible in his neck. I'd never seen him lose composure in public. He once got informed we'd missed a quarterly tax deadline and didn't blink. But today, he looked like someone had hit him with a baseball bat made of subpoenas. He didn't even bother lowering his voice. Tell me that email wasn't real, he barked. Silence. You've seen it, right? He said, waving the paper around like it would start talking. Who sent it? I want names now. The blinds on the room weren't closed. Beautiful oversight. I had a perfect view. Inside the room, Wesley, legal counsel, internal audit, Shelley from HR, white-knuckling her pen like she wanted to jab it into her own thigh just to feel something. And of course, Preston, seated dead center. Pale, stiff, knees locked together like a kid in the principal's office who finally realized Daddy's name can't fix this one. He wasn't smiling today. No cold brew in hand. No highlighter-colored buzzwords. Just stillness. He didn't deny it, didn't speak. Just sat there blinking too much, jaw twitching slightly like he was chewing guilt and couldn't swallow it. Wesley slammed the printout down on the table. I couldn't see the text from across the floor, but I knew every word on that page. I wrote them, curated them, delivered them. That email wasn't a warning, it was a roadmap. A perfectly structured data bomb, laid out in digestible chunks for any audit team worth their salt. Attachments included. Names anonymized just enough to make the board panic, but specific enough to make the guilty sweat. No one said my name, no one even looked in my direction. Because whoever sent it hadn't used a work device or a personal one. The metadata was scrubbed so clean it made a bleach ad jealous. No trace, no scent, just smoke and mirrors and cold, hard facts. By noon, all bonus disbursements were suspended pending further review. Preston's department budget was flagged for unauthorized contractor variance, and the automated payroll system had 4 executive accounts locked with red letter alerts reading, "Manual approval required." That alone told me the audit team had gone nuclear. Once you're in manual review territory, you're no longer talking policy. You're talking exposure. Still, I did nothing out of the ordinary. Shelley passed my desk on the way out of the war room. Her eyes flicked toward me, brief, confused, maybe even a little suspicious. But I met her gaze with a slow, blank blink, like I had no clue what was unraveling just 50 feet away. Preston never reappeared after lunch. Rumor was he was in intensive consults with legal. Someone said they took his company phone. Someone else said IT pulled his badge access. I didn't ask. I just finished my vendor ledger review and submitted my expense report, on time, with full documentation. Because when you've done nothing wrong, you don't need to sweat. And when you've done everything right, no one even knows where to look. By Friday, Westvale didn't feel like a company anymore. It felt like a war crime cleanup site with Wi-Fi. It started with a badge scan at 8:03 a.m. Not Preston's, not HR's. A new one. External. Suits that didn't match our usual vendor roster. Shoes too clean. Laptops unopened, still shrink-wrapped. Audit types. Federal, state, no one knew exactly. But they walked in with clipboards and neutrality so cold it could peel paint off the walls. By 8:15, legal had commandeered the executive suite. HR was kicked out of their own conference room. At 8:22, the internal Slack compliance channel went into restricted mode. No messages in or out. That's when the panic went nuclear. Shelley from HR, normally a smiling blur of PowerPoints and passive-aggressive calendar invites, was practically vibrating by the breakroom coffee machine. Her whisper hissed across the floor like bad perfume. They think it's a whistleblower, anonymous tip, federal compliance threshold. Someone asked her what tip. She said, everything, bonuses, vendors, retaliation. That's the word that changed the temperature in the office, because now HR wasn't just complicit, they were a problem. The complaint had teeth, a long digital tail, and the second any investigator looked at Preston's campaign to punish me for tone, it'd be impossible to unsee the breadcrumbs. They docked my pay over a petty accusation. They'd threatened disciplinary action if I didn't publicly apologize for hurting the boss's son's fragile ego. And now there were audit logs, bonus sheets, Slack transcripts, falsified expense approvals, and an HR trail that painted a nice, tidy picture of corporate retaliation against a long-term employee who just happened to be sitting on enough dirt to bury a fleet of Teslas. At 9:07 a.m., 2 IT managers and a legal rep walked directly to Preston's office. He tried to block them at first. Hands up, defensive posture, weird fake casual laugh like this is all just a big mix-up, right guys? It wasn't. Asked him to log out. He stalled. They unplugged his dock. Then they took his laptop. He protested, said he needed it for urgent innovation workflows. The legal rep didn't even blink, just handed him a printout and said, until further notice. The door stayed open while they went through his drawers. That's when the shouting started. You think it's her, don't you? The whole floor froze. You think Karen did this? She's been after me since day one. He wasn't whispering, wasn't even trying to hide it. Just yelling my name like it was a curse he could throw at the audit team like garlic at a vampire. I didn't react, didn't turn, didn't blink. I just highlighted a row in my spreadsheet and typed the note, duplicate vendor code CQ2 reconciliation. Let him scream. Let them all hear him unravel. Someone from legal stepped between him and the floor. Quiet voice. Something about defamation. Preston stormed off to the corner office they hadn't revoked yet, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the shared printer. For the next hour, silence ruled. HR didn't breathe. Finance tiptoed. IT ran silent scripts from the server room. I updated a procurement flowchart. At 11:26, someone whispered near my desk, "You good, Karen?" I looked up, smiled gently, and said, "Never better." Because I was. I wasn't safe yet, no. The game wasn't over. I still had to play it straight. Still had to act like I didn't know my digital fingerprints were nowhere near that email. Still had to walk the tightrope between suspiciously calm and just another burnt-out finance drone who's used to chaos. But deep down, I could feel it. That cold, delicious pull of gravity shifting. For the first time in years, The company wasn't pretending everything was fine. They weren't brushing it under the rug. They weren't shielding Preston. Were finally afraid of something, and they didn't even know who to blame. Monday arrived with the subtlety of a hangover wrapped in a board packet. I came in early out of habit, not strategy. Sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and stared at my inbox. Half the usual emails, no chirpy notes from HR, no passive-aggressive nudges about apology drafts, just quiet. Like the system had coughed, crashed, and was now rebooting in safe mode. 8:45 a.m. The CEO's name was on the visitor log. Not an email, not a conference call. A physical log. He'd flown in from his strategy retreat in Aspen or wherever the hell he'd gone to be out of reach during the crisis. He wasn't happy to be back. Rumor was he got the call from legal on Saturday. Board members were livid. Audit summaries were ugly. The word nepotism was used more than once. Apparently, one of the external auditors asked, point blank, why is the largest discretionary bonus of Q2 tied to a ghost consultancy run out of a UPS mailbox? The answer? Silence. Or worse, I'll have to check with Preston. The meeting that followed was closed door. 6 board members, 2 lawyers, 1 CEO with blood pressure meds probably rattling in his pocket. Nobody emerged for hours. I worked like normal. Filed 2 budget amendments. Reviewed a vendor credit request. Replied to an email from legal asking for a routine payroll verification spreadsheet for the last 3 quarters. Attached. No commentary, no delay. The real fireworks started around 1:30 p.m. Preston was called to the executive suite. He walked in slow, no strut, no smirk, hair messy, shirt untucked in the back, phone clutched like a rosary. He came out 20 minutes later with no laptop, no badge, and no eye contact. Someone from HR escorted him to the elevators. The whole floor pretended not to watch, but we watched. Oh, we watched. They didn't call it a firing. They called it administrative leave pending investigation, which, in West Vale speak, is the first verse in the song of corporate exile. 5 minutes after Preston vanished, HR Director Shelley was seen collecting her potted plant, and one of those framed motivational posters that said integrity starts with you. Irony nearly knocked over the copy machine. She didn't say goodbye, didn't look at anyone, just walked out like someone who'd been told her services were no longer necessary, ideally before she triggered a lawsuit. By 3:00 p.m., another email hit the staff list. Subject: Payroll Review Adjustments FYI Body. In light of recent audit findings, certain prior bonus disbursements are being reevaluated, and where appropriate, reversed. May see changes reflected in internal dashboards. Finance went full lockdown mode. People were pulling spreadsheets like it was a race to decode the Da Vinci bonus scheme. Names disappeared from the Q2 incentive logs. Phantom vendors vanished from the contractor roster. It was like watching ghosts get exorcised, quietly, brutally, line by line. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw knowing glances. I just worked. Like always. At one point, Wesley, the CFO, walked by my desk. He slowed, stared for a second longer than usual. Not hostile, not grateful, just curious. Like he was looking at an animal in a cage, unsure whether it was sleeping or planning something. I nodded. He nodded back, then kept walking. No words exchanged, none needed. That looks at everything. You knew, you watched, you waited, and you're still standing. And I was. No celebration, no cake. No corporate apology wrapped in PR spin. Just numbers. Clean, corrected, honest numbers starting to reappear in the system. And me, still at my desk, still unbothered, because the truth is I didn't need a medal. I just needed to know that for once, finally, someone else would have to clean up the mess. And this time, it wouldn't be me. I wrapped up at 5:02 p.m., a whole 2 minutes past my usual log-off, which in West Vale time is basically overtime without the pay. My inbox was clean. My reports submitted. My files backed up to an encrypted thumb drive tucked in the lining of my purse, next to a half-melted pack of gum, and a receipt from when Preston once made me pay for his lunch because his card had fraud alerts. Fitting. The office was quiet now. That post-purge silence where everyone's afraid to breathe too loud, lest legal mistake them for the next sacrificial lamb. Phones didn't ring. Slack channels were suspiciously dead. Could hear the janitor's cart echoing down the hallway like a funeral procession. I stood up, smoothed the hem of my sweater, picked up my badge, the same one I'd worn for 17 years, through fire drills, midnight audits, 2 recessions, and 1 surprise wedding proposal in the break room, not mine, thank God. Then I reached into my drawer and pulled out a plain, unmarked envelope, sealed tight, no label, no return address. The paper inside wasn't dramatic, no grand manifestos. Just data, clean, complete, corroborated. The final pieces, the ones I deliberately held back, not out of mercy, out of strategy. Because any good takedown needs sequencing. And this was my final play. I walked across the floor, heels echoing louder than usual. A few heads turned. Nobody said a word. Maybe they knew, maybe they didn't. Didn't matter. The CFO's door was open. Wesley was still there, sleeves rolled up. I long since abandoned, eyes bloodshot from a week of realizing his spreadsheet kingdom had termites. I stepped inside. He looked up, startled. I placed my badge gently on his desk. "This should complete the audit trail," I said, setting the envelope beside it. He didn't touch it right away, just stared at me, processing. "Karen, don't," I said, calm as a corpse. "No need." He gave a slow nod, not grateful, not afraid, just aware. I turned and walked out. No handshake, no escort, no security to collect my things, because no one wanted to touch what I'd just done, not until they knew exactly how deep it went. As I passed the elevator, I caught a glimpse of Preston, back in the building somehow. Face red, hair messier than before, sleeves bunched like he'd tried to roll them up and lost the war. He was in a full meltdown with IT. "What do you mean you can't find the source? You have the email. Trace it. Trace the damn email." The poor kid from IT looked like he wanted to melt into his keyboard. Legal stood a few feet behind, arms crossed, voice flat as a morgue attendant. "We still don't know who sent it, Preston." His voice cracked. "It's her. You know it's her. It has to be. Why else would she leave?" I didn't break stride, didn't look back, just walked out of West Vale for the last time. Into the parking lot, into the dusk, to the kind of peace that isn't soft or sentimental. It's sharp, cold, earned. The kind of peace you only feel when the war is over and your enemies are still trying to figure out who loaded the gun. I didn't leave because I lost. I left because I won. Quietly. Entirely. Without ever raising my voice. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.